Oh, my Kingdom Hearts. Ruined.
These videos are not for children. If you're a children, then piss off.
To be fair, you have to have a very high IQ to understand Kingdom Hearts. The story is extremely subtle, and without a solid grasp of multiverses, most of the plot will go over a typical viewer's head. There's also Sora's...
Hey there, it's me, your least favorite YouTuber, the Infuso, and welcome back to another Day It Died. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different here. As we're not discussing the death of a well-known beloved TV show or movie series, we're instead going to be talking about a video game franchise. Now, I've made Kingdom Hearts videos here on the channel before, and they haven't exactly done fantastic numbers. So here's to hoping that'll change, but also knowing that it won't. Regardless, I'm here to talk to you about one of my all-time favorite video game series, In the Day It Died. So let's take this deep dive into the series and figure out where it all went wrong.
Kingdom Hearts!
One of the biggest issues this series has had is its need to tell its story through multiple platforms. The first game was released on PlayStation 2. So you would think that this is a PlayStation exclusive narrative, but you would also be very wrong. The following game was made for the Game Boy Advance, and then the next one, which was a non-canon adventure, was released on cell phones exclusively in Japan. And only after that did it return to the PlayStation 2. But then its sequel was released on mobile phones again. This one was canon. Then you have the next game on the Nintendo DS, and then the next one on the PSP, and then the next one on the Nintendo 3DS, a website for the one after that. You get two final mixes and compilations of the games on the PlayStation 3, and then we're off to PlayStation 4 with another final mix compilation in Kingdom Hearts 3, which is also, for the first time ever, available on the Xbox One. And then another spin-off comes out for the Nintendo Switch. Why do I need 27 different devices in order to understand your narrative? Granted, the compilations do help a lot. They do fill the narrative on one convenient device, as I think should have always been intended. Except every final mix tragically cuts out one of the games and instead decides to tell their narrative in a montage of the original cutscenes and journal entries? No wonder there's so much confusion. Well, actually, maybe there's a few other reasons for the confusion. You know, I don't think it's a controversial statement to say that Kingdom Hearts gets a little complicated. Firstly, you have this banana-shoe teenager traveling from world to world, basically interrupting the plots of the most famous Disney movies, and inserting himself into these events, forever changing their timelines, all while he encounters alternate versions of Final Fantasy characters who exist outside their original continuities altogether. In Kingdom Hearts, you have to stop a dark force known only as the Heartless, as they attempt to consume each world in utter darkness and steal the hearts of those worlds' inhabitants. And then your best bud Riku turns on you and becomes possessed by the series' main villain, Ansem, and that's when the series was at its most understandable. Then in Kingdom Hearts 2, you're basically trying to do the same thing all over again, except now you're also trying to stop nobodies in addition to Heartless. Who are nobodies? Well, as it turns out, when a person loses their heart, it creates both a Heartless and a nobody. They're basically divided up into two equally difficult little monsters. Oh, and the bad guy you fought in the last game? Well, that wasn't a guy. That was a Heartless that looked like a man for some reason, because sometimes they do. You never know. And now you're gonna have to stop his nobody. And not just his nobody, but his band of nobodies. Half of which you've already faced in Game Boy Advance's game, who took all of your memories and turned them into playing cards. The only way to return a person back to their previous person is to basically combine their Heartless and nobody. How do you do that? You kick their ass. That's the only way. You have to beat both sides of them equally, and then they merge back together to reform who they once were. Oh, and also, when Sora turned into a Heartless in the first game, because yeah, that happened, little did you know it also created a nobody. And while his Heartless looked like this, his nobody actually looks like this. Roxas. Oh, and also, because Sora had Kairi's heart in him, which, yeah, that's also a thing that happened, during that period of time in the first game, it also created a nobody of her named Naminé. A nobody who, unlike every other nobody was created, has magic powers. Why? I don't really know. Okay, getting kind of muddled here, but I think I'm still mostly following. 358 and 2 is Roxas' story. It's the story of Sora's nobody from his inception all the way to his inclusion into Organization 13. Organization 13 being Xemnas, who is actually Ansem's nobody, band of friends. We learn about his story that includes a mysterious 14th member of Organization 13. 14th member of Organization 13. Yeah, seems like false advertising, but yeah, sure, why not? I'll go with it. Xion is never mentioned before in any of the games prior, and isn't mentioned in most of the games after. So, while the rest of them are a bunch of nobodies, she is an absolute nobody. But here's the biggest twist. Xion is actually an imperfect replica of Sora derived from his memory of Kairi. That's the actual description of what this character is. I had to look it up because I played these games a million times over and didn't get it to a full T, but that is what is claimed. She's basically Sora and Kairi's non-existent love child. Oh, and she's not even technically a nobody. I don't know what she is, but neither do these games, so let's just move on from it. Oh, and by the way, also, all of the organization members, all of them were previously other people who had different names. Their organization nobody names is just their name switched around. It's an anagram of their other name, but also with an X in the middle. Which, by the way, X in this series, it is a tracking system. It is the way you say key. It is very important. The letter X is very important to this series. Birth by Sleep is a game that takes place long before the original Kingdom Hearts. So you would think, oh, how possibly confusing could this be? It's a prequel a long time before the main game started. Well, here's one of the lead characters, and you would think, oh, what, Roxas is in this game? No, this is in fact not Roxas, but just somebody who looks and sounds exactly like him. Of course. That's just somebody who looks and sounds exactly like Sora's nobody years and years before Sora's nobody would actually ever exist. His name is Ventus. Ven for short. So why does he look like Roxas? Well, it's simple. Because he lost his heart, and his heart would travel to find a young Sora who harbored his heart, thus making Sora's eventual nobody identical to him in every way. Oh, and hey, Ventus, he has his own other, too. A guy named Vanitas, who has essentially extracted darkness from Ventus's heart, and guess who that guy looks like? Sora! Of course! Why? I do not know. I cannot tell you. I have looked up many reasons. People say because Ventus's heart was in Sora, but Sora was still a child at that point in time and not a full-grown man or teenager. So really, that guy should look like young Sora, not old Sora, but now he looks like Sora before Sora would look like Sora. And on top of that, I don't think that he looked like that when Ven's heart went to Sora. He looked like that prior to that. So what does that mean? No idea.
I'm the piece of Ventus that was taken away, and you're the piece Ventus needed to be whole. So, why shouldn't you and I look exactly the same?
What the hell does that even mean?
I read a lot of answers. They don't seem to be concise, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Oh, and you see his buddy over here, this dude, the other hero? That's Terra. Okay, so get this. The main villain, Master Xehanort, this really evil-looking guy. Like I don't want to say evil has a look, but this man is obviously evil. That is all I will say. He takes over his body, but in doing so loses his memory, causing him to become Xehanort. That Xehanort would be the guy who would lose his heart, creating both the main villain of the first game, Ansem, the Heartless, and then the main villain from the second game, his nobody Xemnas. And the only reason he's going by the name Ansem is because he's taking on the name of his former mentor, the real Ansem, who is this guy. Which, by the way, this guy would go on to bandage his face, change his identity to Diz, which stands for Darkness and Zero, and that is the real Ansem. This guy who we were told was Ansem, not really Ansem. Cheap duplicate. Xemnas, actually an anagram of the name Ansem, which is, again, not the character's name, it's actually Xehanort. Who is actually, in fact, Master Xehanort in Terra's body, so you figure that out. Oh, and then Terra's existence, like his spirit, his heart, it goes into the armor. So now he's walking armor. In addition to that, somehow, someway, he's also the shadowy guardian Heartless to Ansem, who is the Heartless of the old evil mentor in the young protege's body, who has a guardian Heartless despite he himself being heartless. He is somehow both the Heartless and the armor at the same time. Don't know. At this point, don't care. At this point, I'm done trying to make it make sense. In this game, the team, before they succumb to darkness, have to fight off a brand new threat. The Unversed, who are all just extensions of Vanitas, the Sora-looking dude before Sora looked like a grown dude, who's actually the darker half of Ventus, the Roxas-looking dude before Roxas ever existed. You guys good right now? Take a breath, we still have more to go through. The next game follows Kingdom Hearts 2, Dream Drop Distance. Let's not even get into the plot, which is about a non-existent sleeping dream world, but that are also real worlds, and there's duplicate worlds, there's worlds here and there. We're not even going to go there. I'll just save us all some time. But there's a new threat called Dream Eaters. But there's good ones, and there's bad ones. Like I said, not even worth it. We're going to try to stay away from that. So who is the villain of this game, you ask? Why, it's Xehanort. No, not that one. No, not that one either. There you go. That's our guy. This is Xehanort. Young Xehanort, who is for all intents and purposes a younger version of Master Xehanort. So why is it he looks identical to older Xehanort after he took over Terra's body? This looks like a young Terra Xehanort, but it's not. It's young old man Xehanort. How does that make sense? Fuck if I know. Let's just go with it. So this Xehanort is a time traveler. Because of course! We started with galaxy jumping and made it to sleeping identical dream worlds. Let's just move over to time travel because every confusing idea, we'll just throw it all in there and have the fans try to figure it out. We learn in that game that young Xehanort is going to multiple places in the timeline to take out various variations of himself to create the real Organization 13. This time with the appropriate amount of members, I hope. And every new member has to be a form of Xehanort. Sure, why not? You would think that you'd have enough versions of this guy that you could fill a nation with, including previous versions of the character that are actually other characters possessed by him. Why not? But then they also turn around and turn some of the original Organization members into part Xehanort. How is one part of another person? Screw you! That's how!
That's nuts!
By the end of it, you'll learn that Xigbar, a series favorite, isn't actually Xigbar, but Luxu, who was one of the original Keyblade warriors in the Keyblade War. There is so much confusion that I overlooked for this entry, just so I can get to my next point sooner. This was the simplified course in Kingdom Hearts. One of the most frustrating aspects of these games is their self-nostalgia, their fondness for their first entry. They're constantly bringing players back to this one specific point in their past. Immediately after releasing the first game, its very first spin-off is really just cleverly recapping the events of that game that came before it. Sora's losing his memories and desperately trying to regain them by revisiting all the worlds constructed by those memories. We go through basically the same exact plot, just slightly different. After we just did this, isn't it a little bit too soon for a shout out and a callback? We just got out of it. Why don't we move on to the next idea? Why not go on to the next adventure? Why relive the last one? Is really the clip show of these entries. Kingdom Hearts 2 comes out, and then the following game is coded, which yet again is just a recap of the games that came before it. Most notably, 1 and Chain of Memories, which is odd when Chain of Memories was already a recap of 1, but sure, let's do it twice. Why not a recap of a recap? At the end of Chain of Memories, Nominate erases her existence and the events from the game. But Jiminy Cricket, who by the way is following you around, jotting your adventures down in a journal, leaves a mystery message before his mind melt. King Mickey digitizes that information, and Data Sora, no joke, you're not the real deal, but just a VR version of the character, goes through the same events of those games, fighting off corruption bugs. Fast forward to Kingdom Hearts 3, which tries to be something of an ending point for some fans and a starting point for others, but fails to do both. And it's constantly going out of its way to try to address its convoluted stories for the casual viewer, to no avail. But the very next sequel, the very one that comes after 3, is all about recapping all of the events that came before it anyway. Except now you're looking back at those events to a beat. I will, however, give the several compilation releases a pass because, that's a little bit different. That's them literally providing you the same game over again for a new system. So thank you for that. I think worse than anything I previously mentioned is the fact that these games have been going downhill. The gameplay continues to improve in these fantastic ways. I'll say, in terms of gameplay, Kingdom Hearts 3 was the most fun to play, but I had the least fun playing it out of all of these games. Surprisingly, most fans play these games for the strange story, but it doesn't really feel like it has any more story to tell. The plots have become too perplexing, and any new reveal feels like a tired rehash of something they've done before. The constant, "Oh, this isn't that person, it's this other person," is somehow both boring and confusing. This is gonna sound weird, especially considering the series, but it's all just gotten a little bit too goofy. These games have done all they could think to do, so now they're just doing it all again. I love this series, and I hold it near and dear to my heart, but I'm calling it. I can't imagine any scenario where this series picks up and turns it all around. I'd like to live in that world, but unfortunately I feel like I'm living in that sleep dream world where it doesn't. It's hard to pinpoint exactly where it all went wrong, because a big part of me wants to say after 2. I mean, the next 3 games that followed were Coded, the Kingdom Hearts mobile game, and 358 by 2 Days, or whatever it's supposed to be called. But what followed that was Birth by Sleep, which is probably the best spin-off game out of the bunch. And I would actually say it's up there with the numerical ones. It might just be my favorite, but I think that Birth by Sleep was the last solid entry this series had to offer. There were plenty of interesting things done in all of these games, but I don't think any of them since Birth by Sleep has lived up to its full potential. So if you enjoyed this video and would be interested in seeing me take a journey through this whole franchise, let me know in the comments section by saying,
Thanks for meddling.
With all that being said, I was your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso, and I thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.